Welcome to the Tailgate Podcast with your host, Al Blanton. At Tailgate, we celebrate the rich history of sports in the state of Alabama. So come with us as we relive great moments, great games, great players and coaches, and in the process, preserve memories for a lifetime. My first question to you is, and have you seen this, by the way? Have you gotten a copy?
I have. I've seen it. My parents have a copy, and I've been so busy. I have not read it, but I saw the photos. I said, I know it's a good job because I know you put a lot of work into it. I'll definitely have to. I'm gonna check it out. My parents had a copy, and I've just been on the go, so I don't have one with me here.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been able to stop through and read the whole thing. But my mom said it was great, so I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
That's the mom test. So
Yeah.
yeah. And what's been the response? I mean, I noticed when we posted this on Instagram that Ron Slay commented. I mean, you have some pretty big names, your colleague there at SEC Network commented. What's been the feedback and the response, especially to this picture right here?
Oh, listen. With me, it's always going to be getting a bunch of stuff from my former teammates. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, of course.
my personality is pretty relaxed. It's simple. You know what you're going to get. So you see me out there with a suit on in a phone booth with a briefcase. Everybody's just like, "What is this?" I mean, they liked it. I think it was cool. Obviously, it was a lot of fun.
Oh
Um,
man. Yeah.
but yeah, it was cool. I
I
enjoyed it.
still wish we could have worn the glasses. I still wish we would have,
Then I definitely would have been catching it from all of my former teammates. They would have been killing
the true Clark Kent look.
it.
So, um, I watched the Vandy Florida game the other night, and it really seems like that you're getting comfortable and you're hitting your stride. I know this is still kind of new to you, but how do you feel like things are going with your commentating career?
I think it's going well. This is I guess this is my fourth season doing it, and my third season with ESPN. And so it's been a lot of fun. I'm getting better and better with each call. I get more comfortable, and you have the familiarity with the teams now. I've been able to call almost every team in the SEC. You get a feel with the coaches of what they're trying to do, and more so, I come from an education background. My parents are teachers. And with that, I always want to have the style of trying to be informative and teach the game. And that's the only thing that I can hope that the viewers can take away from games that they watch when I'm on the call.
Man, it's not easy. I don't know if people understand that doing what you do at the level you do, it's not easy. I mean, there was a Christmas classic in Jasper, and my buddy Bart Heitch asked me to come on and be I was the color guy for the Jasper Christmas classic. And I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
and if you're not used to it and you've got to come up with something clever to say every 5 seconds, it's just a difficult thing.
It's a challenge. I think for me, being around so much basketball my entire life and always being comfortable in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, it's been a natural transition from playing. But I do think for the casual person that's watching, that's often critical of broadcasters, if they were to get in front of a microphone, they would find it very challenging. You obviously have a partner that you have to work with, and it's a production. You have people behind the scenes that you have to be in sync with. And being able to paint the picture to the viewers and also go deeper in a short amount of time. I mean, you only have what from the baseline to the 3-point line before you got to hand it back over to the play-by-play guy to describe the action. So how quick are you at getting it to the viewer, to explaining what took place and articulating it with the proper tone that's needed for the play?
And you don't want to talk over the other person too. I mean, you don't want to get tripped up. Do you have like a system that kind of works? Is it just back and forth like a tennis match, or is there signals or anything like that? Or
No, I think not too many signals or whatnot. You just kind of develop a rhythm with
yeah,
your partner.
yeah,
And the main thing that keeps me relaxed is just like you just kind of view it as just these are just two guys sitting there watching a game. And if you keep that perspective, it becomes very, very relaxing doing the job. We're just two guys watching the game. and you got one guy who knows a little bit more about uh, what's the strategy and the X's and O's and what they remember as a player, and you got another guy who knows everybody's name and the statistics, and you just work with each other, in concert.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. It's a really cool job, and it keeps me around the game.
Yeah. Let's talk preparation for a moment. Okay, let's go back to last week and you've got Vandy on, you go to Gainesville on Tuesday. Talk about your approach to preparing to go and then also kind of walk us through like when do you get there? When do you get in the hotel? What does your experience look like?
Well, the preparation, obviously, you have to watch film to see what the teams are going to be doing. For me, I always find it best if I can catch the game live on the schedule. I don't mind going back and rewatching games and studying it, but I feel like when I watch it live, I'm a little bit more tuned in because I
Mhm.
don't know the results of the game prior. I don't know what players are going to have a big productive output. I don't know the score, the win. I don't know anything. So I'm able to take it all in that regard. I also like to do a lot of studying of the statistical things. What's the team doing? How are they trending? Look at their schedule, who they're playing next, and kind of make a little bit of an expectation of what I expect this team to do in the sense of urgency that this game may have and in the importance of it. I think that helps to kind of deliver the tone to the game to the viewer. And when you're traveling, depending on where the game is, you might want to get there the night before. But as long as you're there early enough on the day of the game for the shoot around, then
Mhm.
you get an opportunity to go to shoot around. You'll watch them practice. You'll see what they're going through. You'll get a moment to talk to each head coach for maybe 5, 10 minutes to get a little bit of a conversation or a breakdown about their team. Some coaches give more information, some don't. But observing the shoot around is helpful, and talking with the coach is extremely helpful for the job. And obviously, you come back to the gym about a couple of hours before tip and go through some more production meetings and walkthroughs with your crew. And then when the tip starts, you're just two guys watching the game and talking about it.
Is that kind of commonplace across the board where if you're a football announcer, you're going to go down and watch practice and I mean, you're just constantly gathering information. Obviously, when you're talking about a player, you want to say things that are true and you can gather that information from the coach, but also, and this is part two of my question, I'm sure that the SEC network does a great job of feeding you information that you need for your broadcast.
Well, I can't speak for football, but from what I hear from others, football is a little bit more involved. I think that the weekends are a little longer. They have to get there a little bit earlier. Obviously, the game is much longer of a game. So there's more information. There's more players on the field that they have to spot to know each of the players and what they're able to do. So I would probably assume that football is a little bit more involved. But basketball not being as segmented as football, you don't have long to explain the action. And as an analyst, you have to figure out a way to be, really succinct with what you're trying to say and make sure that you're not over talking and try to explain what's happening. Football, every single play, you're going to have a replay to explain exactly what happens. And that gives the analyst time to really break down every single set and talk about what happened and also talk about the importance of what the team has to do on the next play. Basketball doesn't work that way. You might get two back-to-back baskets that come so quickly you don't even get a chance to speak about it.
Mhm.
So it's a different dynamic, but at the same time, the preparation is key. It's just with anything that you do. You want to
Mhm.
make sure that you study the tendencies of the players. You understand who the leaders are on the team that are really making the game and the team go. And for me, as a former player, I always love to explain little details within the game within the game, to let the
Mhm.
viewer know that something that others might not find as significant, this might be the real reason or
Mhm.
the real point in the game why this team is able to get a win.
I had a interview with Ron Franklin one time. He was the former ESPN college football announcer with Mike Gottfried, who is Mark's uncle.
Right.
And Ron said something very interesting to me. He said, in a football game, a lot of times, let's say somebody scores a touchdown, you don't want to just start talking over that moment or a great play happens. You want to let the audience experience that moment. And going back to what you were saying, is that kind of similar in basketball? I mean, is there sometimes in conversations there's a silence and there could be an uncomfortable silence. How do you make that determination of, okay, I need to let the audience experience this moment a little bit versus, okay, it's time for me to insert some, an intelligent comment here.
Well, I would say this. What people oftentimes don't realize is that when you're a two-man crew, it's two different jobs. You the play-by-play and the analyst. And, as Roger Hoover was one of my main partners that I had early on starting off at Alabama. And one thing that he told me that was always really good is that, the play-by-play is going to give the who and the what, and the analyst is going to give the why and the how.
Hmm.
So you have two different jobs of two different things that you're watching. And within that, it's important to understand the time and situation, to lay out, to allow your partner to have his moment.
Hmm.
If it's a big slam dunk or a breakaway and you can see it coming, then that as an analyst, that's not your time to shine. You
Hmm.
want to make sure that you allow your play-by-play guy to have that moment where he
Hmm.
can drive it home because that might be played over on the replay forever, and that's when he should have that moment. It's your moment more so to break it down after the play about what happened and why they needed to do that. And that's a chemistry that you develop.
Yeah.
And not only are you a teammate with your play-by-play, you're also a teammate with the production crew, the guys who are in the truck behind the scenes. And as your friend mentioned about the football, you should recognize when there's a big moment and
Hmm.
atmosphere is extremely important. And in those big moments, there's no words need to be said. You
Hmm.
can see if this is a big touchdown and the crowd is going wild and the band is playing. That's your moment. Maybe you should just allow the people behind the scenes to capture those moments so the people at home can say, wow,
Hmm.
that atmosphere is electric. Really want to be a part of it. Or it's a big slam dunk and it just goes crazy off a nice alley oop and they got the camera on the student section and the microphones are loud courtside. It's just a moment to just let everybody understand what's really going on in the building. And the worst thing you can do is be the analyst sitting here talking over a moment that
Hmm.
needs to be captured.
Yeah. Now, I told you before we got on here that this thing was going to be comprehensive. So what I want to do now is shift gears a little bit and let's go back to 2005.
Oh yeah,
And man, that was such a big year for you. And I mean, I wrote this down. I mean, you talk about accolades, McDonald's All-American, Parade All-American, Gatorade Player of the Year, Alabama's Mr. Basketball, and you played at Athens High School, played for your dad, right?
right, correct.
Yeah. And I mean, at one point when all this stuff was going on in your life as a young 18-year-old man, did you ever just pinch yourself and go, I can't believe this is happening to me?
I don't think I ever had that moment. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever had that moment till this day. I mean, sometimes I have to look back and maybe it happens in a moment. But listen, I was a kid that was a dreamer. I grew up loving sports, coach's kid, grew up around the Athens High School basketball program. I was the water boy. I was the towel boy. I was the kid that was trying to sneak the basketball and get some shots in between the girls' game and the boys' game. We're trying to shoot on the court between at halftime. I was that kid. And I watched basketball and every other sport, with so much passion that I always wanted to be there. I always wanted to be a professional basketball player. Probably could go back into my fifth grade yearbook and see what my future occupation was and probably said I wanted to be a professional basketball player.
Mhm.
So to me, it was always just the vision, the dream, and the goal. And everything that was happening was just happening because I thought, this was just the next step.
Mhm.
Um, I was appreciative of it. I've always lived in the moment and understood exactly where I was. Um, but at the same time, I don't know if I ever had a moment where I said, wow, like, I can't believe that I'm here. I think that that moment started in the beginning of a dream of saying that I really believe I can be there. And if I work hard at it, it can happen. And, I was blessed with some size and some ability and some competitiveness. And everything worked out pretty well for my dreams.
Yeah. I want to talk more about your parents now. I mean, they've obviously had an incredible influence in your life, and since we've done this article, I've been able to talk to more people from the Athens community, and they've got such a great reputation, man. I mean, like everybody loves them. What is it about them and their raising of you that kind of set them apart?
I don't know. I think it's probably just small town values. You know, your parents are teachers in the school system, and you know, for myself and my older sisters, we were always together, uh, and everything. You know, it just kind of revolved around Athens High School and basketball and being at the gym and being at the school. It was just always involved in everything in the school with extracurricular activities. So if you saw one of us, you saw all five of us. And that close-knit, you know, household and environment, those values, I think, kind of helped me to be prepared for every single walk of life that I've been able to be into. And I think it's more so about just understanding that you don't just represent yourself, you represent your family, represent your community, and you represent all the other people that have invested in you.
Hmm.
And if you have that type mentality, then you understand that it's no pressure, but it's just a responsibility
Hmm.
for you to do things of a certain standard. And I think it starts in the household, and it starts with that type of cooperation that you have with each other within the home.
And these are all things that your parents taught you and instilled in you. I mean, it seems like y'all just had a great family life of togetherness and closeness and
Well, I don't think it was something that was that you went out of your way to try to drive home. It was just an organic thing.
hmm
I think it was just, you know, they did their jobs. Their jobs revolved around things that had people together.
hmm
And, you know, you just because of the environment, then you were able to benefit from some things. But I don't know if it was necessarily like a concerted effort of just saying, like, this is what you want to do and this will be the results.
hmm
We were just kind of living life, a simple life. And you know, I think it was a good one.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there was some really good basketball. I mean, you went to Athens and you went to Alabama, and the story is you passed on North Carolina, and and then you get to Alabama, and there was some really good basketball being played during that time. I mean, you think about Florida's on incredible run with Billy Donovan and that group winning two national championships. Tennessee was strong. Mississippi State had good teams back then, and obviously Kentucky is always strong in the SEC. Who were some players that you faced that were really tough to play against during at that time?
Well, I think you have to start with, as you mentioned, Florida won the national championship back to back my freshman and sophomore year. So those were some really good teams. Florida was a good team. I don't know how much of the individual matchups were as challenging because they played so connected. And I think their style of play that they played at that particular time was ahead of the curve of what everybody else was playing. The matchup that I think was the most challenging, I always say, was at LSU with Glenn Big Baby Davis, and mainly just because of his physical stature. You know, he's 6'9", 350 pounds, and you're just having to battle with him every single possession coming down the court. You know, it was really physical. That era of basketball, you had six players in the paint at all times, not a lot of spacing. So every little inch that you were able to give up was going to be a bucket or a foul. And we definitely had some really good games that we had between us and LSU at that time. And you know, a lot of them I felt like I got the upper hand, to be honest. But that was just a matchup that I felt like was one that you really had to prepare for more than others.
Yeah. I looked up your highest point totals. I did a little research on your stats, and so see if any of these ring a bell. December 9th, 2006, Alabama State, you got 34.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
December 22nd, 2007, you get 30 against Missouri State.
Yeah.
And
I
then
remember
uh,
that one.
and then January of 2007, you get 28 against Arkansas at home. What what do you feel like was your best game in college? So you
Oh, wow.
scored so much that you just forgotten. I mean, it's just, so many 30 and 20 point games that what do you feel like was your best game?
I you know, I did have a lot of good games. You know, it's hard to pinpoint which one I think was my best performance. I think I had some performances that were more notable because of big wins, and they
Yeah,
probably were my freshman year. We played Florida at home, and it was the last time for any team to beat Florida before they win 10 games in a row, win the
yeah,
SEC tournament and the national championship. And I believe I had 11 or 12 points and 17 rebounds as a
yeah,
freshman and some blocks. I had another double-double against Tennessee my freshman year. And they were wins. So
yeah,
it was the
yeah,
wins though in those games that stand out a little
yeah,
bit more. The other ones that you mentioned were wins, but you have a big conference game that you're able to do something in. That's just something that
yeah.
you're gonna always remember because it's so hard to win in the SEC, and when you have an impactful performance like that, then it definitely makes the moment a little bit larger.
So you would take a lunch pail effort of 11 points and 17 rebounds and get the win over a 34-point effort and not get the win.
Um, well, we got the win on the
Yeah.
34 point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just saying, just generally speaking,
I believe on the 28 point effort against Arkansas, it was a double double, but we did not get the win.
yeah, yeah,
And I definitely will take the games where you got the
yeah,
win because you felt as if that the production that you had and the everything that you were able to do, it actually made a difference. And sometimes you feel empty when you have the performance or have large point production and you don't get to win.
yeah,
You feel as if it was something that you could have done better,
yeah,
that you could have done differently. Maybe you could have gotten other teammates involved, or maybe you feel as if you didn't do enough. But when you get the win, you definitely feel like everything that you contributed counted.
yeah. I know I want to talk about Coach Godfrey, and then I want to talk about some players that your teammates, but I know you have got a good relationship with Coach Godfrey. What made him a good coach?
Well, I think he was first off, he was a really good recruiter and what he was able to sell to all of us to come. He had the vision that he really wanted to build Alabama's program with really good Alabama players. And at that period of time in the 2000s when he was there was a lot of talent in the state, and he was able to keep most of them with the university. That was something that resonated with me, being a local kid, hometown kid, from a close community that I felt that it would be more significant to reach the goals that I wanted of a Final Four, a national championship with my home state school. So that was the first thing that stuck out. That you looked at the roster and it's full of. When I was going to be there my freshman year, you talk about a Mr. Basketball and Kennedy Winston, who was going to be on the roster. Ronald Steele, a two-time Mr. Basketball. Chuck Davis was a first-team All-State guy. And you add myself to that. And they always made a really good job of getting a really good player from another state over. May it be Mo Williams,
Mhm.
Alonzo G from Florida, Jamario Davidson from Atlanta. So you're able to always get some really good players just in the region. And I thought that was a really good recipe for success. But he was a good coach who had a really good career. I mean, you win multiple Sweet 16 efforts at his different jobs. He goes to an Elite Eight as assistant. He won a national championship at UCLA, won at Murray State. So you can't deny what he was able to do as far as his resume is concerned, and he should get a lot of credit for that. And the things that he was able to teach us, particularly a lot on the defensive end and toughness, I think was something that really helped me out with my professional career moving forward.
Mhm. You mentioned Ronald Steele, you mentioned Alonzo G, Jamario Davidson. How did those guys impact you as a player?
Oh, well, they were great players, first and foremost, and the competition level makes everyone rise to another to a higher level themselves. So the main one I think was coming in as a freshman playing against Chuck Davis every single
Mhm.
day. I mean, he was a all SEC guy. Had led the team as the main post player to an Elite Eight. So he was a seasoned veteran. And that was a tough challenge to play against every single year or every day as a freshman. But there were high levels of competition in those practices. The pickup games were uh, really tough that we played all throughout the summer. The conditioning that we went through in the off season was a challenge. But more so than anything, you just learned how to compete. You learn how to work with guys who had different skill sets and accept your role because you're playing with talented players. It's not always going to be about you.
It's interesting to me, the recruiting dynamic. I want to go back to that for just a moment because, like, a lot of times historically, and Alabama's had a great basketball program. I think people that are young don't understand how good Alabama has been throughout the years. But I mean, like, a lot of times, some of those best players would leak out and go to, Kentucky. I'm thinking about Eric Bledsoe and people like that, Boogie Cousins. I mean, they'd leak out and go to other places. And now the recruiting dynamic under Oates has changed a little bit, where we're not as reliant on those big time players in Alabama, and we're going out and getting talent all over the country. You know, what is your assessment of that?
Yeah, and I think to touch on the first thing that you said, Alabama has always been a power. And I think that for young fans, I think it's important for them to really go back and really learn the history of Alabama basketball because I know it can be very easy for people to look at the current generation and think that, the success has only began, here recently. And Nate Oates has done an outstanding job. I mean, huge support of what he's able to do and really proud as an alum for what he's been able to do for the school that I was able to play at. But this is something that goes all the way back. You talk about those Rocket 8 teams that were one of the best teams that they had in the 50s, and C.M. Newton and what he was able to do with bringing local guys into the fold like Wendell Hudson and Leon Douglas, T.R. Dunn, Ray Odoms,
Yeah,
Charles Cleveland. I mean, on and on and on. And to move into Wimp Sanderson, who gets a lot of guys from the state of Alabama with Enos Watley and Bobby Lee Hurt, Buck Johnson, Mark Godfrey who
yeah.
is from the state of Alabama, Jim Farmer, and you get a good player like a Derek McKee and Antonio McDyess from Mississippi to come and be a part of it. I mean, the list goes on and on of great players. Reggie King.
Michael
And they
Ansley.
should all get the
Yeah,
who that?
Michael Ansley.
Michael Ansley. I mean, like the list goes on, and I don't think that people really give Alabama basketball the respect that it deserves for its historical place in college basketball, and particularly the guys with really good talent and really good coaches that had great professional careers.
Yeah,
I mean, at one point in time, in the mid '90s when I was a kid, I can remember Alabama had the most players in the NBA at one current time. It was about 10 players. It was Robert Ory, Derek McKee, and Keith Askins, who's from
pretty
Athens,
well. Yeah.
Latrell Sprewell, Eric Washington, Jim
Mhm.
Farmer, Antonio McDyess, Roy Rogers. I mean, so when you go back to this particular time period, Jason Caffey, who's another Alabama guy, depending on which generation you're talking to, we all understand that there has always been a
Mhm.
high standard. The only thing that was elusive was to get that Final Four or a national championship. I think the whole perspective in the view of Alabama basketball would have been different if they would have had a couple of Final Fours, maybe in the 70s or the 80s, a national championship somewhere in there. And I think people would view the history of the program totally different. There's other teams that have a couple of national championships or maybe one national championship and a couple of Final Fours, and they view their program as an athletic or as a basketball school. But I don't know if you can even look at some of those and say if they really even have the history of Alabama. It's just the NCAA tournament that has been the challenge for the
Mhm.
University of Alabama. But now Nate Oates has been able to get over that hump.
Mhm.
And he's been able to do it by making Alabama a national recruiting brand. I mean, even getting guys who are Canadian to come to the university.
Mhm.
But listen, for me, I love to see guys from the state playing for the home state school. You have Mark Sears, who's one of the best players on the team now, and he's a kid from Muscle Shoals. But it really doesn't matter where you come from for me. If you're coming in playing for the same school and giving it your all, then I'm appreciative of the efforts. And I only hope that if you're not from the state and you're a part of the program, that you can learn to respect the guys that came before you that played on that court because it was a lot of really good players, and there will continue to be more good players after. And be a part of a legacy is very, very important, and it should mean something to any player, regardless of where you're from.
Mhm. Now you're an analyst, and and you're paid to analyze the game, and so right now, I want you to analyze your professional career, particularly when you went to the D League, and I want you to look back, and you had a lengthy professional career, and I don't mean to discredit that at all. But if you had to go back and talk to yourself during that time and coach yourself up a little bit and see, and again, I understand that making the NBA is a very hard thing, but is there something, did you do all you can do? Is it just something that, or could you go coach yourself up a little bit and say, hey, you know what? In this particular area of my game, I could have improved and maybe I would have had a little bit better shot.
That's a great question, and a question that I've never had anyone ask me, but it's something that I always think about. I mean, obviously, I was drafted in the second round after my junior year. I left early from the university, and I made the roster, signed a multi-year guaranteed deal with Golden State, drafted by Don Nelson. But I sat there for about 2 months on the inactive and never got a chance to get into an official game. I played in the first preseason game against the Oklahoma City Thunder and Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. You like to look at the stats, so you could probably find a box score out there. But the first action I ever had, I actually had a double-double in NBA play. I had 12 points and 13 rebounds in about 20 minutes. And I thought I was off to a great start about what the organization thought of me. But you really find out about the NBA is entertainment. And there's also, when players are getting paid and you're on a payroll, they're going to play the guys that are on the payroll to get played. And that's part of it. If I could do anything different to have a longer NBA career, the main thing that I would say is your best ability is availability. And what you want to make sure that you do is to always be in tip-top condition at all times. And I had an untimely injury that took place during the pre-draft phase, which lingered into training camp. And I think that injury that I had by pulling my quad muscle, which is soft tissue injury, is a little bit difficult for the healed and get back to 100%. That injury played a role in the first impression that I was able to make on the organization. And I was not being able to play at full strength against obviously the highest level of competition that I've ever been able to play against. And getting off to that start, I think was something that hindered me from being able to get on the court faster. I would also add that if I made an adjustment to my play style, I probably would be a little bit more flamboyant. I probably would take a little bit more risk. But my mindset probably was always based on trying to play winning basketball. And being a coach's son, you always want to try to play the right way. But when it comes to playing professionally, you have to make yourself enticing to the scouts. And in many aspects, a game in which that I had, which was simple and basic, offensive rebounder, score in the post, hustle, play strong defense. Don't take as many chances with shooting your outside shot or flashy plays like crossovers and all types of things of that nature. They make you stand off on the screen when someone looks at the film. You jump off the screen. So I probably would be a little bit more flashy and show a lot of the skills that I actually had, even if it might have cost a win or two. I think that actually helps you on the professional ranks.
Yeah.
So it's a tough thing because like I say all the time, there is no correlation between being a really good college basketball player and being a good NBA prospect. And the NBA is going to look for guys who have great positional size. And if you don't have that, then that already lowers your chances. And they're looking for elite level athleticism. So you have to figure out a way that what are you going to do in the game to show that? So I would add more things like getting out in passing lanes and showing that you can jump in transition, shooting more threes from the outside, putting the ball on the deck. All of those things that people can see that are not necessarily winning plays in college basketball, but it makes you more attractive.
Basketball has been great to you, though. Man, you've been all over the world. You started out in Athens and then Tuscaloosa. You went to North Dakota, Italy, Israel, Japan. Just so many interesting places. What have been some of your favorite places along the way that you've been?
Well, I loved all of them. It was a great experience to be in all of the places that I was for over 13 years. Israel would probably have to be the first because I played for an elite organization. And that was the first time in a while that I had played for a team that was the favorite. And coming from a high school and having a high standard as a high school recruit and thought of highly, I always wanted the spotlight of being on a top level team. And playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv, that provided that. I was 23 years old. This is my third year professional. I found myself as a starting big on a team that goes all the way to the EuroLeague championship game. Our head coach was David Blatt, who went on to coach Cleveland to the NBA Finals with LeBron James in that crew in 2015. So, and you're in a small country where everybody supports that team on the highest stage. So that was a great, opportunity for me in the fan base of being in an arena that has a sold out arena every single night, being a celebrity just walking around the streets. That was pretty cool.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, like when you're playing over there and you're just kind of walking around the streets, I mean, like Tel Aviv or Tokyo, or I mean, do people recognize you? I mean, is there a celebrity status that goes
Oh, yeah.
along with that?
Oh, yes. And see, and that's one thing. The biggest thing that I had to take away from playing abroad is that you find out once you leave the state of Alabama that there's far more out there outside of in the state. I think
Yeah.
most people think that, and even within America, you think American, you think that this is the only way to do things, and when you go other places, you find out they do things in another way that are good too. So it helps you to appreciate your experience that you have here at home, to appreciate the experience that you have abroad. But you also find out that just like how Alabama has a huge, passionate fan base, other countries have teams that have maybe a larger fan base.
Yeah.
And, everywhere that you go, you're going to be recognized.
Yeah.
Everything that you do. I mean, almost this paparazzi in the street that's looking
Yeah.
at you, just trying to catch you going into a restaurant, grabbing some food. I mean, all types of things like that, and it's an interest where they're talking about you 24/7.
That's awesome. I want to know, we need to wrap up here in a second, but I got a couple more questions. First is I want to know a little bit more about your family. I know y'all are living in Nashville now, but what is life like, on a weekly basis in the Hendrix household?
Um, my wife and I, we have three kids, so listen, I feel like I'm a dedicated youth sports coach. So outside of when I am a basketball analyst, I'm trying to get back so I can get my script ready for a youth basketball practice to be able to do that to see if we can somehow develop and win a game. Or may it be a baseball, or I've coached flag football, coached soccer. So in my downtime, that's what my real job is. It's going to be at some ball field trying to help some kids get a little bit better. And that's a family thing. So that's where you can find me. That's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. Do you put pressure on yourself when you're coaching? I mean, people think like, oh, it's not a big deal to coach six and under basketball. Man, I'm the head coach of my son's basketball team. I put pressure on myself.
You should. I mean, you should have a pressure of performance.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, the pressure comes from the standpoint that I want to do right by the children.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the children get something from the experience. Every one of them. You have an hour-long practice. Did you organize your practice plan to help every kid develop? Did you organize your game script to give everyone, adequate playing time? Did you put every kid in position to get better individually and also contribute to the team winning so they can all have some success?
Mhm.
And more than anything, did you inspire them and motivate them that they don't want you to be their last coach and that they
Mhm.
want to come back the next year and
Mhm.
play the game again? It's a lot that can be taught when it comes to youth sports and the character building that it provides. And I think it's an important role for coaches to try to make sure that those kids get something out of it, that they want to continue to
Yeah.
play the game and to continue and enjoy it.
Yeah, you got to make it fun at that age. I mean, that you want them to keep playing year after year. I mean, when I got out of sports, that's when I started to go off the rails, And so if you can keep them dialed in, I think it's better for them in the long run.
Right.
Um, so what's coming up for you? What's on the docket for the next, few weeks? And I mean, where are you heading? Where can we expect to see you? Are you going to be doing any SEC tournament stuff? Tell us what's going on in the next few weeks.
Well, I'll continue to call games throughout the rest of the season. So then the next call I have, I'll actually go out of conference. I'll go into the AAC to the American. I'll have Charlotte versus Florida Atlantic this Saturday. No, not this Saturday. Sorry, next Monday on
Yeah.
ESPN2. And then I'll go back to the SEC and be in conference. I have to go to Arkansas on the Wednesday, the 12th. So it's going to be more calls in the SEC, and then we'll move towards Champ Week and see about conference tournaments and whatnot. But and then postseason play. But it's a lot of fun. I look forward to it, and I try to be prepared, and I try to hope that the viewer can have the same passion that I have about the game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, I really do appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate everything with respect to the magazine, and I hope that you've enjoyed the process, and man, I just wish you the very best of luck in the future.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, man, we'll talk to you soon.
And that's a wrap. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Tailgate Podcast. And in the meantime, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We'll see you next time.